Hello, I'm Louisa Pilbeam. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, Europe has outpaced the US in military support to Ukraine, while Donald Trump wants to lead in diplomacy and put an end to Russia's war. Who ends up calling the shots, and at what cost? It was meant to fix Nigeria's economy, but currency devaluation as part of wider reforms is hurting manufacturers. We look at how factories are trying to keep their business afloat. Going on holiday to take a snooze. The trend known as sleep tourism is on the rise. But why? And who's profiting from people's dreams? Europe is now pledging more military aid to Ukraine than the US. That's according to the Germany-based think tank, the Kiel Institute, while Washington is negotiating the nation's future. President Donald Trump has held talks with the Russian and Ukrainian presidents in a bid to end Moscow's war. But there's still a great deal of uncertainty. If no peace deal is reached, American support to Kyiv could shrink further, pushing even more of the financial burden on Europe. But sustaining the flow of that money is a challenge to many European governments whose economies are under pressure. If a deal is struck, the question shifts from who gives more aid to who will pay for rebuilding what's left. We will discuss all of that with our guest shortly. But first, Katia Lopez-Horayan reports.
Wars are expensive. That's why money and military investments were top issues in the recent meeting between Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Mustafa Rahman is Europe Managing Director for the Eurasia Group. He's also a Senior Research Fellow at the London School of Economics, and he joins us from London. Good to have you with us. So this latest report by the Kiel Institute then shows European military aid to Ukraine has overtaken American output for the first time since Russia's invasion. Why this shift then?
I think the Trump administration has been absolutely clear that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is a European security problem, and it is for Europe to take the lead in not only resolving the conflict, but supporting Ukraine militarily, financially, diplomatically, politically, and that the US wants to extricate itself from this conflict.
OK, so the US distancing themselves then financially from this. But as Trump floats a peace deal with Putin and then Zelensky engages with Washington, who has more political leverage? Europe, which is now paying more, or the US?
So I think the financial support for Europe is actually the easier part of the problem to solve for. There are already a number of facilities that the Europeans are using to funnel money to Ukraine, whether that's bilateral aid, as your earlier graphic showed, from individual member states. The European Union is leveraging its budget. It has created a facility that runs through the end of 2027 to provide financing not only to Ukraine militarily, but also to provide budgetary support to the administration. The European Union, alongside the Americans, are using the frozen assets in European clearinghouses, the interest that's generated from those frozen assets, to finance and support Ukraine. The bigger problem, I think, for Europe is on the military side, where they really need American support to create a deterrent that will prevent future Russian aggression.
And of course, at the moment, what is being discussed is a peace deal, potentially. Would that reduce the financial burden on Europe? Would there then be more costs going forward for reconstruction, for example, in Ukraine?
No, I suspect the reconstruction costs will be in addition to the desire of European countries to make sure they are in a position, even in a time of peace, over the medium and longer term, to be able to deter Russian aggression. I mean, there is a hegemon on Europe's border spending 7 to 8% of its national income on its military. That is a long-term strategic threat to the security of the continent. And I think that is a challenge and a risk that is keenly and widely shared across all leaders on the continent and indeed, as I say, the European institutions.
Okay, Mustafa Rahman, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you. With oil wealth, Nigeria should be oversupplied with foreign currency, but years of mismanagement has led to a shortage of dollars. To fix the problem, President Bola Tinubu has lifted foreign exchange controls and allowed the naira to float freely and weaken against the greenback as part of his broader economic reforms. The devaluation was aimed at reviving growth and attracting foreign investors to Africa's most populous nation. But the measure has hurt manufacturers, with many factories forced to shut down as costs climbed and dollars to pay for imports dwindled. But many manufacturers are now turning to domestic sourcing to keep their business afloat. The use of local raw materials increased to an average of almost 58% last year. That's according to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Joining us from Abuja is Paul Alaje, Chief Economist at SPM Professionals, a Nigerian economic consulting firm. Thank you for being with us, Paul. So with so many factories out of business and struggling to import materials, is currency devaluation doing more harm than good?
Thank you so very much for having me. Currency devaluation in Nigeria has both sides. With the devaluation of currency, we have seen some relative stability in the economy, which includes exchange rates remaining around 1,500 to 1,550, sometimes 1,600. But what that has left us with is weaker purchasing power, as some factories, foreign factories, are left Nigeria, including Procter and Gamble. We have also seen that Nigerian manufacturers have found it really very tough to import commodities into Nigeria, I mean raw materials into Nigeria. So people's purchasing power have reduced significantly, and manufacturers have concerns. In fact, report has it that between 770 companies have shut down, and manufacturer of Nigeria says about 300 other companies are seriously struggling between 2023 and 2024.
If factories are now increasingly sourcing material domestically, will that help them stay in business? And what key materials are not available domestically?
Clearly, factories are looking inward for alternatives, but you know that it is not all materials that come from farm that can be readily used in the factory. We have semi-finished product which factories can use, most of which are not currently available in Nigeria.
Now, it was worth more than $690 billion in 2024. The sleep tourism industry is booming. In a world where burnout and sleepless nights are all too common, travellers are increasingly booking trips, not for the sights, but for a good snooze. The travel industry has spotted a lucrative opportunity, turning rest into big business. From wellness retreats to five-star hotels, businesses are rolling out specialised sleep packages that could cost up to thousands of dollars. That goes beyond plush pillows and blackout curtains. The programmes include medical-led retreats, diagnosing sleep disorders, relaxation rituals, and tech-driven comfort. The sector is part of the broader wellness tourism industry, which is estimated at more than $800 billion globally. Joining us from Adelaide in Australia is Dean Miller. He's a sleep scientist and senior lecturer at Central Queensland University. So thank you for being with us today. Checking yourself in to a lovely hotel to sleep with a pillow menu, for example. It all sounds rather appealing to most of us today. Is this kind of thing scientifically proven, or is it clever marketing?
A lot of the trends we see in sleep tourism are following the trends that we see in science and can be easily implemented at home. So the sleep tourism attractions may be related to sleep tech, may be related to preparing the sleep environment for optimal sleep. We can do that on holiday, but we can also do that at home, and that's the takeaway point, I think.
Let's look at the economy in terms of this. Is sleep increasingly becoming a product?
Yes, and particularly inadequate sleep. So inadequate sleep costs us, or in Australia at least, $45 billion each year, whether it's directly or indirectly. Shift workers and everyday people are struggling to get that adequate 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And because of that, there's an increased interest in sleep health. People are buying devices to, one, track their sleep, potentially improve their sleep, and there's a multitude of products in the market that can help us improve our sleep practices generally, and that's what sleep tourism is kind of jumping on the back of as well.
And how will businesses be looking at this? Because how much does lack of sleep affect productivity and then, of course, the overall economy?
Inadequate sleep can have a massive impact on productivity. We know that inadequate sleep impacts our cognitive performance, it affects our mood. So if we're not getting that good sleep, we're not performing optimally. And what we do know is the only way to improve that is to get that adequate sleep. And putting in place safeguards, which are consistent sleep times, aiming for that 7 to 9 hours each night, and creating a sleep-friendly environment in the bedroom, keeping the lights nice and dim at night in the lead into bed, and really prioritising that bedtime routine.
Now, as I mentioned, this does sound wonderful, but could people be misled into treatments and stays and this kind of thing, when they don't actually help?
Yeah, absolutely. In some cases, it may be a Band-Aid solution for some people. And if you have the means, by all means, go on holiday and prioritise your sleep, get good sleep through sleep tourism. But potentially it is a Band-Aid, and when you return back home and return to your busy schedules and don't implement the learnings that you may have had through these experiences, then it's just going to go back to the norm, and you're going to have that inadequate sleep effect. So investing in your sleep doesn't necessarily have to be monetary.
Okay, it seems like it is rather appealing. Dean Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that is our show for this week. Do get in touch with us on X. I'm at Louisa Pilbeam at TV, and use the hashtag AJCTC when you do that. Or drop us an email. countingthecost@aljazeera.net is our address. But there's more for you online, of course, at aljazeera.com/CTC. That will take you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links, and entire episodes for you to catch up on. That is it for this edition of Counting the Costs. I'm Louisa Pilbeam from the whole team. Thank you for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is up next.